Hey guys, hello and welcome back. As always, my name is Leyzar, and today we got another versus or comparison video, the Dex Sybaris versus the Sybaris Prime. Now these two weapons are very similar both in performance and in actual handling, but one is better than the other in certain aspects, and I'm going to try to highlight exactly what are the pluses and minuses of these fantastic burst rifles. That said, all of these comparison videos have a degree of bias to them. I will try to maintain objectivity, however, as much as I can. So let's take a look at the stat differences, because mostly all of the differences, yet not all, come from the stat differences. When it comes to the accuracy, the Dex has the advantage at 28.6. Also, the Dex has a higher critical chance at 35 versus 30%. Same crit multi, a higher fire rate on the Sybaris Prime, and a much larger magazine capacity at 20 versus 14. The reload, however, is much quicker on the Dex Sybaris. So even though it has a smaller clip size or magazine size, it has a much faster reload. Status chance, now there's no competition here. The Sybaris Prime has a good status chance, a great even status chance at 25%. Versus the Dex Sybaris, which only has 10%, which matters a whole lot if you take into account the default damage on the weapon. Taking a look at the Prime, that is pretty balanced, 29, 29 and 29.9, so both of the weapons have impact, puncture and slash. Now that is pretty good for the Prime, because you can add a slash mod and you can play for the weapon's base status chance to get some slashes on your target. That is a way you can play the weapon, but from my point of view it's not the ideal way. If you take a look at the Dex, it has about 25-30% less damage than the Sybaris Prime, but it has a high amount of slash. And you might think, hey, that's awesome, right? Well, not exactly. In order for me to leverage that high amount of slash, I also need a decent status chance, which the Dex Sybaris simply does not have at 10%. Now, that's not the only difference. One of the biggest differences, at least from my point of view, is in the handling of the two weapons. Let's take a couple of free shots just so you guys can understand exactly what I mean. First, the Sybaris Prime has one of those standard climbing recoils. The first bullet will land exactly where you aim, but the second one, and along with all the multi-shot on the weapon, will land a tad higher. So depending on the distance between you and your target, your additional bullets and all your multi-shot might miss the target. Of course, for short-range shots such as this, it doesn't really matter, but if I was to take a longer range shots, of course, the distance between my initial bullet and all of the multi-shot will be pretty high. So bear that one in mind. It really depends again on the distance between you and your target, and that is a problem I take with the Sybaris Prime. The Dex, however, is entirely different in its handling. Oh, by the way, the Dex also has this muzzle flare that looks like the lotus symbol. You need to slow down the video, but if you take a look at my muzzle flare, it's in the form and colors of the lotus, so bear that one in mind. Now let's take a look at that recoil. She's steady as a rock, and it doesn't have a climbing recoil. Mostly all of the bullets land roughly in the same area, so when it comes to actual precision, the Dex Sybaris has a clear edge. Also keep in mind that it doesn't really matter how much damage you're doing per bullet if your multi-shot is simply gonna miss, or your second bullet is simply gonna miss the head of the target. And it does matter to go for headshots when it comes to critical chance weapons especially. Now let's take a look at what kind of builds we're going to be testing on these fantastic burst rifles. We have two types. First, an elemental setup, and then we're going to go to a bleed setup through hunter munitions. The mandatory mods are Serration, Vital Sense, Split Chamber, and Point Strike. For an elemental setup, I chose corrosive because I built for the toughest targets in Warframe, the Grenier. High voltage, malignant force, the two 60/60s for toxin and status chance, and we're going to be adding even more corrosive to the weapon with Stormbringer or infected clip. It doesn't really matter which of the two you add, because they will simply wash in to the corrosive value. The reason I do this is because I want to get my corrosive value higher than IPS times 4, keeping in mind the IPS rules in Warframe. And of course, vigilante armaments for additional multi-shot. This is the initial build we're going to be testing between the two weapons. You're probably already thinking that the Prime is going to do much better for a status build because the Prime has a higher status chance. But in actual testing and gameplay, the difference between the two is not really all that high. First, some ancient healers. Basically, you can one-shot them if you get a little bit lucky with the crit. Take a look at that. Absolutely fantastic performance out of the weapon. Corrupted heavy gunners, however, are gonna be a different story because of the huge amount of armor they have on. The more corrosive procs I get on the target, the more and more damage my subsequent shots are gonna be dealing. So as you can see, for a corrupted heavy gunner, it takes a whole lot of shots to take him out. And we can also shoot some Corpus for kicks and giggles, because why the hell not? Now Corpus, they don't have a lot in terms of damage mitigation. Some of their units can be extremely annoying, especially the guys from Orvelis. Nullifiers as well can be extremely annoying, but in terms of damage mitigation, they can be taken out rather easily. So if you have an opponent which doesn't really have a lot of damage mitigation but is a pain in the arse because of abilities, what you need to look in is to crowd control. So there you go. Next, we're gonna have a look at the Prime Sybaris Prime. And of course, we're gonna be using the exact same build as before. Mandatory mods, plus high voltage, Malignant Force, Stormbringer or Infected Clip, and Vigilante armaments for additional multi-shot. You might have saw an Arcane pop. Am I cheating? Nope. It's Arcane Velocity, guys, okay? It only applies to secondary weapons or to pistols. And we're gonna be spawning the exact same targets one more time. You're not really gonna see the difference when it comes to weaker targets, or let's say targets with not a lot of damage mitigation. So as you can see, when it comes to the ancient healers, it's pretty much the same show as before. Keep in mind that the elite units of the infested faction, such as ancient healer, are weak to corrosive damage. And if I was to shoot one of these here corpus for kicks and giggles, oh, I missed that shot, you're gonna see the performance is mostly the same as with the Dex Sybaris. Of course, a critical chance weapon in this case would be a whole lot better. If you guys wanna build versus Corpus, look into Gas and or Toxin. But you are gonna see a difference when it comes to targets that have a lot more damage mitigation, such as the Corrupted Heavy Gunners, and I'm able to take out one of these high level targets a lot faster than I was with the Dex Sybaris, because that status chance is working at my advantage with a build such as this. I'm getting more corrosive procs on the target, so therefore I'm gonna be able to take them out a whole lot more quicker. I gotta keep in mind how I aim, however, because once again this is a climbing recoil, so I'm aiming roughly at the neck. What distance is this between me and my target? 18 meters, so I'm roughly aiming at the chest area, so the additional multi-shot will make contact with my target. And that is a thing that I just simply hate to keep in mind all of the time when I'm aiming with a weapon such as this. Now, there is also the question of availability between these two weapons. Normally, I don't remember when the Sybaris Prime was vaulted the last time. It might be vaulted or it might not be. It doesn't really matter all that much because you can buy it from the trade chat and the prices are simply not all that high for a weapon such as this. However, the Dex Sybaris can only be obtained during the Warframe yearly celebration, and as far as I know, it's simply not tradable. The advantage to the Dex Sybaris from this point of view would be that, if I remember correctly, even though it has a mastery rank requirement, I got it at something mastery rank 4 or 5 and I was able to use it. However, at that point, I'm not sure you're gonna have the mods to max out the weapon. In any case, as far as a elemental status build is concerned, of course, the Sybaris Prime will be performing a bit better than the Dex. But now let's move into a bleed setup. What you can do with these weapons, especially with the Sybaris Prime, is go through the Viral Elemental combo, as Viral on a status proc will be reducing the maximum health of blah blah blah, etc. However, from my testing, both of the weapons perform better without Viral and just increasing the critical chance and critical damage. So, apart from the mandatory mods, we got Argon Scope for more critical chance, Bladed Rounds for more critical damage. Of course, our slashes are gonna be coming from Hunter Munitions, 30% chance to apply a slash on critical hit. Now the Sybaris Prime with Argon Scope up goes to 115% critical chance. That means that all of the bullets that lands on my target will have that 30% chance from Hunter Munitions. And of course, Vigilante armaments. We're gonna be spawning in the same targets once again. And let's see how a bleed build does. Ancient Healer as before. Now what I can do is not hit the target till it dies. I can hit it once or maybe twice and watch the bleeds deal the damage. After all, this is a bleed based build. You can also build the Sybaris Prime by going through the weapon status chance and increasing the slash amount on the weapon, but from my point of view and from my testing, that was simply not all that hot. Take a look at this. I can hit the target till about 50%, then watch the bleeds deal the damage. You saw the value of the bleeds, 2,200 something on a yellow crit. As for a red crit, look at that, 4,272 bleed on the target. Needless to say, if you enjoy slash builds, this is the optimal approach from my point of view. The problem with a build such as this is that it requires Argon Scope to get the most out of the weapon, which is a tad expensive. Argon Scope can only be obtained during the Acolyte event, and the Acolyte event, from what I saw, happens once every year or once every 6 months, something like that. And this is the kind of performance you can expect from the Sybaris Prime with a bleed build that's going through hunter munitions, which is still better than viral from my testing, which is still better than going through the weapons base status chance, because simply the IPS on this weapon is too close together. So bear that one in mind. One shot on the target, of course. Slash against Corpus is gonna be working a bit better than corrosive damage, if you can get a damn proc, that is, of course. Now let's try out the Dex and see how it performs with the same build, of course. The Dex has a small advantage in this case, not a huge advantage, honestly not. The differences are minute as before, but seeing is believing. So let's take a look. Again, Argon Scope bladed rounds, Hunter Mumu, and Vigilante armaments. Ancient Healers up first, just so I can get my buffs on them. 2 shots more than enough to take out one of these Ancient Healers. Of course, they're not very difficult to kill, but again, gotta test against all factions. As for the Corrupted Heavy Gunners, of course, these will take a lot more shots, but you will see that the weapon is a bit more consistent when it comes to the amounts of slash. Look at that, 5,000 something, I believe, 5,376. I think that might have even been a red slash. Now, you do have the possibility of red critting with a build such as this, both with the Prime and with the Dex, because of Vigilante armaments. So if you get a little bit lucky, you get a crit up from Vigilante armaments, which takes you into red territory. If not, normal orange crits, which apply slash, will be around 2,300 for the Dex Sybaris. So as you can see, the performance is mostly the same. Honestly, there's not that much between these two weapons. If you want a slash build through hunter munitions, then I would strongly suggest you go for the Dex. If you want a status chance build through elementals, I don't know, gas, corrosive, or whatever you guys want to build, then the Prime would be the better candidate. But honestly, regardless of how you test and how you look at the problem, the two weapons are mostly the same. The biggest difference from my point of view is in the handling of the two weapons, which is why, subjectively speaking, my favorite remains the Dex Sybaris, simply because I don't want to deal with that stupid recoil on the Prime. Not that it's not more powerful. Sure, pound for pound is able, if the stars aligned and all whatnot, to be the more powerful weapon, but I prefer weapons that are a whole lot more consistent. So again, this is a bit subjective. That's pretty much it for the comparison between the two. We're gonna also unpause the targets because we can create a more realistic situation, at least when it comes to the aiming part. Both weapons are hit scan, however, so they're not terribly hard to use or anything like that. But again, when you're dealing with moving targets, things do have a tendency to change. Plenty of slash on the target. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. What's amazing to me is that they give you this weapon during the Warframe yearly celebration. Now, this weapon is capable of handling high-level content, but of course it pales in comparison to other primary weapons that you guys can use. But I feel it's a bit somehow unfair to put weapons such as burst rifles, such as the Dex Sybaris or the Sybaris Prime, versus monsters such as the Ignis Wraith or the Amprax. I mean, you're not really being fair if you do that, and that's just simply how Warframe works. One more time with the Sybaris Prime for kicks and giggles. And let's go bleed. This whole aiming business is a tad subjective for my taste, simply because I'm not gonna aim like you aim and you're not gonna aim like I am. Hopefully you're not gonna aim like I aim. But in any case, if you have one of these two weapons already modded out, tricked out and all whatnot, then it's not really worth going for the second one, because what you're getting is basically more of the same thing. So bear that one in mind. That's gonna do it for this comparison. As always, my name is Lazar. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. If you got any feedback for me or would like to request specific versus videos, by all means, leave it in the comment section down below. You can also find me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. But until next time, my friends, bye-bye.